The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a hiss that echoed through the vast hall. Taesung adjusted his simple gray suit and walked forward, his footsteps quiet against the polished floor. Around him, beings from 100 different worlds moved through security checkpoints, each one surrendering weapons before entering the chamber. A Vrelian ambassador, its insect-like body covered in purple chitin, watched Taesung pass through a separate entrance, with no guards and no scanners. The creature's compound eyes followed the human with obvious confusion. Human, the Vrelian clicked, its translator converting the sounds into standard galactic speech. Why do you not pass through security like the rest of us? Taesung turned and offered a polite smile. Historical precedent, Ambassador. The Council made special arrangements for human delegates many years ago. The Vrelian's antennae twitched with irritation. Special arrangements? Every species must surrender their weapons. Even the Korvax battle lords must leave their honor blades at the entrance. Why should humans be different? Perhaps you should ask the council historians, Taesung said quietly. He nodded respectfully and continued into the chamber, leaving the Vrelian staring after him with what might have been suspicion or concern. The council chamber was enormous. It stretched upward for 50 meters, with seats arranged in a spiral that accommodated the different sizes and shapes of the galaxy's civilizations. Some delegates sat in pools of liquid. Others hung from the ceiling on specialized perches. The Korvax, massive reptilian warriors standing 3 meters tall, occupied reinforced platforms on the eastern side. The Stellan Federation, a collection of energy beings housed in containment suits, flickered with blue light on the western tier. Taesung took his seat in the human section, a modest area near the center of the spiral. He noticed other delegates whispering and glancing his way. Humans had been part of the council for 58 years now, but their unique status still drew attention. The council speaker, an ancient Valorian whose crystalline body refracted light into rainbow patterns, struck the resonance stone 3 times. The sound brought immediate silence. This session of the Galactic Council is now convened, the speaker announced. First matter: the disputed mining rights in the Kelvar system. A Korvax battle lord rose from his platform. His scales were deep red, marked with scars from countless battles. When he spoke, his voice rumbled like distant thunder. The Kelvar system belongs to the Korvax Empire by right of discovery. We found the asteroid fields 2 cycles ago, and established mining operations. The Stellan Federation has no claim. A Stellan delegate's containment suit brightened with angry orange light. Discovery means nothing without proper registration. The Korvax filed their claim 3 days after the mandatory window. Under council law, the system is open territory. The Korvax battle lord's claws scraped against his platform. You speak of laws and papers. The Korvax speak with strength and blood. Taesung watched the exchange without expression. This was the 3rd mining dispute this month. The Korvax and Stellans had been moving toward conflict for years. Small disagreements were becoming dangerous confrontations. The Council recognizes both claims as valid under different legal frameworks, the speaker said carefully. We propose a joint mining operation with profits divided equally. Unacceptable. The Korvax battle lord growled. We do not share what is ours. Neither do we accept theft, the Stellan delegate replied, its voice crackling with energy. The argument grew louder. Other delegates joined in, taking sides. The chamber filled with angry voices in a dozen languages. The translator systems struggled to keep up with the overlapping speech. Then it happened. A young Korvax warrior on the lower platform stood suddenly, his hand moving to his hip. The movement was instinctive, a response to perceived threat. But the Korvax should not have had any weapon. Security had checked everyone, except the young warrior had hidden a small plasma pistol in a concealed compartment in his armor. The weapon cleared its holster and discharged with a bright blue flash. The plasma bolt struck the ceiling, sending molten metal raining down. Delegates scattered. Alarms blared. Security personnel rushed into the chamber from all sides. The young Korvax stared at the weapon in his hand with horror. He had not meant to fire. The safety had been off. It was an accident born from tension and instinct, but accidents with plasma weapons still caused damage. 3 delegates had been hit by falling debris. None were seriously injured, but the chamber dissolved into chaos. Delegates shouted accusations. Security wrestled the young Korvax to the ground. The council speaker struck the resonance stone repeatedly, trying to restore order. Tae-sung sat quietly through all of it. His face showed no emotion. He simply watched as armed security guards rushed past him, as delegates argued and threatened, as the carefully maintained peace of the council chamber cracked under pressure. When the session finally ended an hour later, nothing had been resolved. The mining dispute remained. The Korvax warrior was taken into custody, and dozens of delegates filed angry complaints about security failures. As Tae-sung left through his separate entrance, the Vrelian ambassador was waiting. That would not have happened if everyone followed the same rules, the Vrelian said accusingly. If all weapons were truly forbidden, Tae-sung paused and looked at the alien creature. You think humans should be armed in the chamber? I think humans should follow the same protocols as everyone else. Be careful what you wish for, Ambassador, Tae-sung said softly. There are good reasons for every rule in this place, even the ones that seem strange. He walked away, leaving the Vrelian more confused than before. The human knew something the others did not understand. The rule that allowed humans to enter unarmed, without security checks, without observation, was not a privilege. It was a precaution, and the story of why that rule existed was one that still made council historians uncomfortable, even after nearly 6 decades. It was a story about what happens when you take weapons away from humans and assume that makes them harmless. 58 years earlier, humanity had just discovered they were not alone in the universe. The revelation came from a Valorian scout ship that detected human radio signals and followed them back to Earth. Within months, human scientists were trying to understand faster than light travel. Within a year, humanity had been invited to send representatives to the Galactic Council. Ambassador Hana had been chosen to lead the first human delegation. She was 42 years old, a career diplomat who had negotiated peace treaties on 3 continents. She spoke 6 Earth languages and had spent her entire adult life building bridges between different cultures. When the Secretary General asked her to represent all of humanity to the stars, she accepted without hesitation. Her security chief was Dong-woo, a former Marine officer with 20 years of experience. He had seen combat in 2 wars and peacekeeping operations in a dozen countries. He was calm under pressure and had a talent for reading dangerous situations before they exploded. Together they led a team of 30 people to the council station: scientists, translators, legal experts, and security personnel, Earth's best and brightest, sent to make humanity's first impression on the galaxy. That impression did not go well. The council treated humans like children. They assigned humanity seats in the lowest tier of the chamber, the section usually reserved for recently contacted species with no real political power. They imposed restrictions on where humans could travel and what information they could access. And they demanded that all human technology and weapons be surrendered before entering any council facility. It is standard protocol, the council speaker explained when Hana protested. All new species must prove themselves peaceful before being granted full privileges. Hana wanted to argue, but Dong-woo placed a hand on her arm. Pick your battles, he said quietly. We're here to learn, not to fight. So they surrendered their weapons. The security team turned over their sidearms, their tactical equipment, even the small knives they carried for utility purposes. They entered the council as the only species completely unarmed and completely unprotected. The other delegates noticed. The Korvax battle lords made jokes about soft-skinned prey species. The Vrelian Dominarch, the leader of a powerful insectoid empire, publicly mocked Hana during the welcoming ceremony. I have seen stronger creatures in my garden, the Dominarch clicked, its translator making the insult clear to everyone in the chamber. Tell me, human, do you shed your skin when frightened? Or do you simply hide? End. Chen. Laughter echoed through the chamber. Dozens of species found the joke amusing. Hana stood there with her delegation, unarmed and humiliated, and forced herself to smile politely. "We are here to learn from our new neighbors," she said clearly, "and to build relationships based on mutual respect. Respect must be earned," the Dominarch replied. "Not given freely to every species that learns to build a radio." Dongwu watched his team's reactions carefully. Several of the security personnel had their hands clenched into fists, but they followed orders and remained calm. They were representing Earth. Personal pride meant nothing compared to that responsibility. The first 3 months passed slowly. Humans attended every session, learned the complex political structures, and tried to establish friendly relationships with other species. Some delegates were kind, others were dismissive. But gradually, humanity began to find its place in the galactic community. Then the Korvax and Vrelian fleets moved toward war. The conflict had been building for decades. The Korvax Empire and the Vrelian Dominarch controlled neighboring regions of space, and their competition for resources had grown increasingly hostile. Small skirmishes had become larger battles. Diplomatic protests had become military threats. The breaking point came over a system called Proxima 7, where humans had established a small colony just 5 years earlier. 3,000 light-years from Earth, Proxima 7 was a modest agricultural world with 10,000 human settlers. It was also located directly between Korvax and Vrelian territory, in a region both empires claimed as their own. When the Korvax fleet began moving toward Proxima 7, the Vrelians responded by sending their own warships. Neither side wanted the planet itself. They wanted the strategic position it represented, and neither side cared that humans were living there. The council convened an emergency session. The speaker tried to negotiate a peaceful solution, but both empires refused to back down. "The Korvax fleet will arrive at Proxima 7 in 4 days, a military analyst reported. "The Vrelian fleet will arrive in 5 days. If both fleets meet at that location, war is inevitable." Hana stood and addressed the council. "There are 10,000 human civilians on that planet. Families, children, people who have done nothing wrong. Give us time to evacuate them." The Korvax battlelord turned his massive head toward her. "How much time do you require?" 48 hours, Hana said. She had already done the calculations. With the transport ships available, they could get everyone off the planet in 2 days if they worked without stopping. The Dominarch's antennae twitched with what might have been amusement. 48 hours? Impossible. The Korvax will not wait. The Vrelian fleet will not wait. Your colonists chose to live in contested space. They accepted the risks. They are civilians, Hana repeated. They have no weapons. They have no military value. There is no honor in killing them. There is no honor in weakness, the Korvax battlelord rumbled. Your species should have been stronger. The council debated for 6 hours. In the end, they gave humanity 12 hours to begin evacuation. After that, the battle would proceed with or without human presence. 12 hours to move 10,000 people. It was impossible. Everyone knew it was impossible. But Hana activated the emergency protocols anyway. She sent messages to Proxima 7, warning the colonists to prepare for evacuation, and she sent Dongwu with his security team to coordinate the operation. "Do what you can," she told him, as he prepared to depart. "Save as many as possible." Dongwu looked at his commander, at the woman who had spent 3 months being humiliated and dismissed by species that considered humanity beneath their notice. He saw the anger in her eyes, carefully controlled but burning underneath. "What if I can save all of them?" he asked. "Then you will have performed a miracle," Hana said. "But I will not order you to die trying." Dongwu nodded slowly. "No orders required, Ambassador. Just permission." "Permission for what?" "To show them what humans can do when you take away our weapons." Dongwu's transport ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel and entered the Proxima 7 system exactly 9 hours after the Council's deadline was announced. He had 3 hours left to begin evacuation before the Korvax fleet arrived. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Sung Min, pulled up the sensor data as they approached the colony. "The Korvax fleet is already here, sir. 52 warships holding position at the edge of the system. The Vrelian fleet is 6 hours behind schedule, but coming fast. They have 48 warships, confirmed." Dongwu studied the tactical display. 2 massive fleets preparing to fight, with 1 small human colony caught directly in between. "How many civilians have been evacuated so far?" "None, sir. The colony administrator is waiting for instructions." "Get me connected to Administrator Kyung-soo," Dongwu ordered. The view screen flickered, showing a tired-looking man in his 50s. Kyung-soo had been managing Proxima 7 since the colony was established. He looked like he had not slept in days. "Thank God you're here," Kyung-soo said. "We've been preparing for evacuation, but we don't have enough transport capacity. Even if we load every ship beyond safety limits, we can only move about 4,000 people in 12 hours. "How many total colonists?" Dongwu asked. 10,237, Kyung-soo said, including 800 children under the age of 10. Sung-min leaned closer to Dongwu. "Sir, the math doesn't work. We cannot evacuate everyone before the fleets engage." Dongwu was quiet for a long moment. He looked at the tactical display, at the 2 fleets, positioning themselves like ancient armies preparing for battle. He thought about the Council's dismissive attitude toward humanity. He thought about the Dominarch's mocking laughter. Then he made a decision that would change galactic history. "We're not evacuating," he said. Every person on the bridge turned to stare at him. Sung-min's mouth opened in shock. "Sir, what?" "Order all transport ships to launch from the colony," Dongwu continued calmly. "Load them with civilians. Children first, then elderly, then families. But do not leave the system. I want every ship positioned directly between the Korvax and Vrelian fleets." "You want us to put civilians in the middle of a war zone?" "Yes," Dongwu said. "That's exactly what I want. Sir, that's insane. That's suicide. We'll be putting 10,000 unarmed people directly in the line of fire." Dongwu turned to face his lieutenant. "The Council thinks we're weak because we have no weapons. The Korvax and Vrelians think we're irrelevant because we cannot fight. They've spent 3 months treating us like children. Let's show them what children can do when adults decide to be cruel." Understanding slowly dawned on Sung-min's face. "You're going to dare them to fire. I'm going to remind them that their honor codes and warrior traditions mean nothing if they're willing to slaughter defenseless families," Dongwu said. "Contact every ship in the system. Tell them the plan. Anyone who wants to leave can leave. But I think most of our people will understand what we're trying to do." The orders went out. On Proxima 7, Administrator Kyung-soo listened to Dongwu's plan with growing horror and grudging respect. Then, he turned to his colony and gave them a choice. "We can try to evacuate some of us and leave the rest behind to die," he said. "Or we can stay together and bet our lives that the Korvax and Vrelians are not willing to become mass murderers." The colonists voted. It took 20 minutes. The decision was nearly unanimous. They would stay. Over the next 6 hours, every transport ship on Proxima 7 launched into orbit. They were cargo haulers, passenger shuttles, personal craft, anything that could fly. They formed up into a massive formation directly between the 2 waiting fleets. Dongwu's ship broadcasted a message on all frequencies, in every major galactic language. The message was simple. "This is Security Chief Dongwu of the human delegation to the Galactic Council. The 10,000 civilians aboard these ships are non-combatants. We have no weapons. We have no military capability. We have no strategic value. We are simply people who want to live in peace. These ships will remain in this position. If you wish to fight your war, you will have to fire through us first." The response from the Korvax fleet came within minutes. The Battle Lord's voice was filled with anger. "Remove your ships immediately. You interfere with military operations." This is a direct violation of Council protocols. We have violated no protocols, Dongwu replied calmly. This is neutral space. We have as much right to be here as your fleet does. If you want us to move, file a complaint with the Council. I will destroy your ships if they do not withdraw. Then you will destroy 10,000 unarmed civilians, including 800 children. The galaxy will watch you do it. Every Council member will see the recordings. Every species will know that the Korvax Empire slaughtered human families to pursue a territorial war. Is that the legacy you want? The channel went silent. 4 hours later, the Vrelian fleet arrived. The Dominarch itself was aboard the flagship. Its message was equally hostile. Foolish humans. You play games you do not understand. Move your ships, or be destroyed. Dongwu gave the same response. We are unarmed civilians in neutral space. Fire if you must. The galaxy is watching. Inside the transport ships, human families waited. Parents held their children. Old settlers who had survived Earth's wars sat quietly, understanding the gamble they were taking. They were betting their lives on the idea that even warrior species had lines they would not cross. The hours crawled past. Both fleets held their positions. Neither side fired. Neither side retreated. Sungmin monitored the communication channels. Sir, both fleets are requesting instructions from their home governments. The Korvax want authorization to fire through our position. The Vrelians are demanding the Council force us to move. Good, Dongwu said. Let them ask. Let the whole galaxy watch them try to justify killing children to win a mining dispute. On the Council station, Ambassador Hana received emergency communications from both empires. The Korvax demanded she order the evacuation immediately. The Vrelians threatened to destroy human shipping throughout their territory if the blockade continued. Hana's response was broadcast to the entire Council. The colonists of Proxima 7 are in neutral space, as is their right under Council law. They are unarmed and pose no threat to anyone. If either fleet chooses to fire on civilian ships full of families, that decision belongs to them alone. Humanity will not order our people to abandon their homes simply because two empires cannot resolve a dispute peacefully. The Council chamber erupted in chaos. Some delegates supported humanity's position. Others called it manipulation and cowardice. But no one could deny the effectiveness of the strategy. 36 hours after the standoff began, neither fleet had fired a shot. The military commanders were requesting political authorization that their governments were unwilling to give. The cost of slaughtering civilians on live broadcast was too high. The damage to their reputations would be catastrophic. On the 42nd hour, the Korvax fleet began to withdraw. 6 hours later, the Vrelian fleet followed. The war had been stopped by 10,000 unarmed humans who simply refused to move. The emergency council session convened 3 days after the Proxima 7 standoff ended. Every delegate was present. The chamber buzzed with angry voices before the speaker even struck the resonance stone. Ambassador Hana entered through the human entrance, still walking past security without inspection. But this time, every eye in the chamber followed her. The dismissive laughter was gone. In its place was something more complicated. Anger, certainly, but also confusion and a hint of fear. The Dominarch rose from its position before the speaker could even call the session to order. Its compound eyes fixed on Hana with obvious hostility. The human delegation must be sanctioned immediately, the Dominarch clicked, its voice sharp with rage. They have violated every principle of civilized warfare. They used their own civilians as shields. They manipulated the honor codes of warrior species. They interfered with legitimate military operations. A Korvax battlelord stood as well. The Dominarch speaks truth. What the humans did was cowardice of the worst kind. They hid behind their children and dared us to fire. This is not diplomacy. This is terrorism. Other delegates joined the chorus. The accusations came fast and angry. Humans were manipulative. Humans were dishonest. Humans had no understanding of honor. Humans needed to be punished for their actions at Proxima 7. Through it all, Hana stood quietly at her position, waiting for permission to speak. Dongwu stood beside her, still wearing his uniform, still unarmed. His face showed no emotion as he listened to delegates call him a coward and worse. Finally, the speaker struck the resonant stone. The sound echoed through the chamber, demanding silence. Ambassador Hana, you will address the accusations. Hana stepped forward. She looked up at the tiers of delegates surrounding her, at the species who had spent 3 months treating humanity as irrelevant. When she spoke, her voice was calm but carried clearly through the chamber. The accusations are that humans acted dishonorably at Proxima 7, that we used civilians as shields, that we manipulated warrior traditions for our own benefit. She paused. Every accusation is correct. Shocked silence followed her words. Delegates had expected denials or excuses. They had not expected a human to admit to the charges so directly. We did exactly what you accuse us of, Hana continued. And we did it because you gave us no choice. The Council gave humanity 12 hours to evacuate 10,000 people. You knew evacuation was impossible in that time. You knew some of our people would die. You simply did not care. The colony was in disputed territory. The Korvax battlelord rumbled. They accepted the risks. They accepted the risks of living on a frontier world, Hana replied. They did not accept the risk of being murdered because 2 empires cannot share space. You gave us 12 hours and no weapons. You took away every tool we had to protect ourselves. So we used the only thing left. We used ourselves. She turned slowly, making eye contact with delegates around the chamber. You call it cowardice. I call it survival. You say we hid behind children. I say we put our children in front, because that was the only way to make you see them as people instead of obstacles. The Dominarch's antennae twitched with agitation. You manipulated us. You used our honor against us. Yes, Hana said simply. We did. Because your honor only applies when you have weapons in your hands. Take away the weapons. And suddenly, you had to face what you were actually willing to do. You had to decide if winning a mining dispute was worth killing families, and you discovered it was not. You speak as if you are proud of this, a Stellan delegate said, its containment suit flickering with confused colors. I am proud that 10,000 humans are still alive, Hana replied. I am proud that we found a way to survive when the galaxy decided we were acceptable casualties. I am proud that we did not need weapons to defend ourselves. At that moment, one of the human scientific delegates stood up. Counselor G1 was a xenobiologist who had been studying galactic species since humanity joined the Council. She carried a datapad with her research. May I present relevant information? G1 asked. The speaker nodded. G1 activated the chamber's holographic display, showing biological data and evolutionary histories. Every species in this chamber evolved as either predators or prey, she began. The Korvax hunted in packs. The Vrelians were ambush hunters. Even species like the Valorians evolved defensive mechanisms like crystalline armor. All of you understand conflict through the lens of predator and prey. She changed the display to show human evolutionary history. Humans are different. We evolved as persistence hunters. We did not have claws or armor or venom. What we had was endurance. We could track prey for days. We could follow an animal until it collapsed from exhaustion. We did not need to be stronger or faster. We just needed to refuse to stop. The chamber was completely silent now. Delegates watched the data with growing unease. This behavior is coded into human biology and psychology, G1 continued. When you take away our weapons, you do not make us helpless. You make us creative. Because humans have spent hundreds of thousands of years learning how to survive without natural advantages. We use tools. We use environment. We use social manipulation. We use whatever works. She closed the display. At Proxima 7, you saw what humans do when we have nothing left but our own mortality. We turned it into a weapon, and that terrified you, because you realized that unarmed humans might be more dangerous than armed ones. The Korvax Battlelord's claws scraped against his platform. It is survival, Hana said. You call it madness because your species would never do it. You fight with weapons, and honor codes, and clear rules. Humans fight with everything, including our willingness to die if it means protecting what matters. The Dominarch moved suddenly, its insectoid body incredibly fast despite its size. It crossed the chamber floor in seconds, heading directly toward Hana. Several delegates shouted warnings. Security personnel started forward, but were too far away to intercept. Dongwu moved into the Dominarch's path. He did not draw a weapon because he had no weapon. He simply positioned himself between the alien and his commander. When the Dominarch reached him, Dongwu caught its striking arm with both hands and redirected the force without harming the creature. The Dominarch stumbled, more from surprise than from any real resistance. The entire chamber froze. Security surrounded the Dominarch immediately, but the damage was done. Everyone had seen a human stop a Dominarch's attack without weapons, without violence, with nothing but technique and calm precision. The Dominarch backed away slowly, its antennae flat against its head in a gesture of confusion. You could have hurt me. Why did you not? Because I did not need to, Dongwu said simply. He returned to his position beside Hana, as if nothing had happened. The speaker struck the resonance stone multiple times, trying to restore order. But order was impossible now. Delegates argued in a dozen languages. Some demanded humanity be expelled from the council. Others suggested that sanctions would be appropriate. A few quietly suggested that perhaps humanity's actions at Proxima 7 had been justified. The session went on for 8 more hours. In the end, no immediate action was taken. The council was too divided. But as delegates filed out of the chamber, something had fundamentally changed. The species who had laughed at humans 3 months ago were no longer laughing. They looked at Hana and Dongwu with something that might have been respect or might have been fear. No one was quite sure which, and that uncertainty was itself disturbing. The Vrelian delegate who had mocked Hana at the welcoming ceremony approached her as she prepared to leave. I underestimated your species, the alien admitted quietly. I will not make that mistake again. Good, Hana said. Because the next time someone threatens human civilians, we will do exactly what we did at Proxima 7, and we will keep doing it until the galaxy learns that humans without weapons are still humans, and humans do not surrender. Back in the present day, Tae-sung finished his story. The Vrelian ambassador who had questioned him at the start of the session sat in stunned silence. That was 58 years ago, Tae-sung said. The council debated what to do about humanity for 6 months. Some species wanted us expelled. Others wanted restrictions on where humans could establish colonies. But then, 3 more incidents happened that made the decision for them. The Vrelian's antennae twitched with curiosity. What incidents? Tae-sung pulled up historical records on his datapad. 4 months after Proxima 7, there was a hostage situation on the neutral station at Helios Gate. Pirates from the Karnak cluster seized control of a trading hub and took 200 hostages, including delegates from 8 different species. They demanded ransom and safe passage out of council space. I remember reading about this, the Vrelian said. The siege lasted 3 days. How did it end? A human negotiator named Bo-Ram volunteered to trade herself for the other hostages, Tae-sung explained. The pirates agreed because they thought a human diplomat would be valuable leverage, but Bo-Ram spent the next 72 hours talking to them. Not negotiating terms, just talking about their lives, their grievances. By the end of the 3rd day, the pirates surrendered peacefully. They said they could not bring themselves to harm someone who had listened to them so completely. The Vrelian was quiet for a moment. That is manipulation. That is empathy, Tae-sung corrected. The pirates expected violence or negotiations or tricks. They got a human who genuinely wanted to understand them. It disarmed them more effectively than any weapon could have. He scrolled to the next record. 2 months later, there was a medical crisis on the Valorian home world. A plague was spreading through their crystalline structures. The Valorians are proud and private. They refused outside help because accepting aid would imply weakness. Thousands were dying, but they would not ask for assistance. Thurt. Massa. Thurt. I know this story, the Vrelian said. Human medical teams arrived uninvited. They did. Taesung confirmed. A doctor named Sang-woo took his entire team to the Valorian system without authorization. When the Valorians ordered them to leave, Sang-woo refused. He said his teams would work from orbit if necessary, but they would not abandon people who were dying. The Valorians could arrest them or shoot them down, but if they did that, the galaxy would watch them kill doctors who were trying to help. Another manipulation. Another impossible choice, Taesung said. The Valorians could maintain their pride and watch their people die, or they could accept help from a species they considered inferior. Sang-woo took away the comfortable middle ground. He made them choose between two bad options until they picked the one that saved lives. The Vrelian's compound eyes studied Taesung carefully. And the third incident? Taesung's expression became more serious. That one happened at a council session not unlike today's. Two species were on the verge of war. Insults had been exchanged. Threats had been made. Both delegates were armed, despite security protocols. When they drew weapons, everyone expected bloodshed. What happened? A human representative named Jae-hee stood up and walked between them, Taesung said simply. She was unarmed. She was small compared to both warriors. She could have been killed instantly. But she just stood there and asked them to explain their grievances to her, one at a time, calmly. And they listened? They did, Taesung said. Because in that moment, they realized that firing would mean killing an unarmed human who was trying to help. The political cost would have been catastrophic, so they lowered their weapons and talked. The dispute was resolved peacefully, but everyone in that chamber realized something that day. What did they realize? That an unarmed human in a conflict zone is more dangerous than a dozen armed soldiers, Taesung said, because humans will walk into situations that should get them killed. And somehow, they make everyone else back down. Not through threats, not through violence, through sheer refusal to accept that a situation cannot be resolved peacefully. The Vrelian was silent for a long time. Around them, the council chamber was slowly refilling as delegates returned from the break following the plasma weapon incident. Security had been increased. New protocols were being discussed. So the council voted to keep humans unarmed, the Vrelian said finally. Because you are more effective without weapons. Not exactly, Taesung said. The official resolution was passed 6 months after the Proxima 7 incident. Resolution 447A. Would you like me to read it to you? The Vrelian nodded. Taesung pulled up the official council record and read aloud. Resolution 447A. Humanity shall remain unarmed in all council spaces. This exemption from standard security protocols is granted in recognition that human delegates have demonstrated an unprecedented commitment to peaceful resolution of conflicts. Furthermore, human psychological and behavioral patterns indicate that removal of weapons does not reduce their effectiveness, but rather increases their creativity in crisis situations. For the safety and stability of council proceedings, human delegates will not be subject to weapons, searches, or security restrictions. This resolution is enacted by unanimous vote of all council members. Unanimous, the Vrelian repeated quietly. Every species voted for it. Taesung confirmed. Even the Korvax and the Dominarch. Because they had all seen what humans do when you take away our weapons. We become unpredictable. Markling 740. We had argued. Every species. We use tactics that warrior species consider dishonorable. We turn our own vulnerability into a strategic advantage. and none of them wanted to deal with that in council chambers. He closed the datapad. So they created a rule that looks like a privilege but is actually a precaution. They let humans enter unarmed because armed humans follow rules of engagement. Armed humans can be understood and predicted. But unarmed humans are creative. Unarmed humans will do things that should be impossible. At that moment, a commotion erupted on the council floor. 2 delegates from minor species had drawn concealed weapons. Their dispute over a trade route had escalated into threats. Security personnel were moving to intervene. But the armed delegates were backing away from each other, weapons raised. Tae-sung stood up without hesitation. He walked down to the council floor calmly, moving between the 2 armed aliens. Neither one fired. They stared at the unarmed human, who had just placed himself in their line of fire. "Gentlemen," Tae-sung said quietly, "I understand you have a disagreement. Perhaps we could discuss it rationally before anyone does something they cannot take back." The delegate on the left, a scaled reptilian creature, kept his weapon raised. "I cannot do that," Tae-sung said, "because if you fire, you will hit me first. And then everyone in this chamber will watch you explain why you shot an unarmed diplomat who was trying to help. Is your trade dispute really worth that?" The delegate on the right, a furred mammalian being, slowly lowered his weapon. "He is right. The humans always do this. They stand in places where they should not stand. And somehow we are the ones who end up looking unreasonable." The scaled delegate growled in frustration, but also lowered his weapon. "This is manipulation. This is diplomacy," Tae-sung said gently. "Now, shall we sit down and discuss your trade route disagreement? I am certain we can find a solution that does not require anyone to die today." Security personnel collected the weapons. The 2 delegates, still angry but no longer violent, followed Tae-sung to a mediation area. The crisis was over in less than 5 minutes. The Vrelian ambassador watched from his seat, his understanding finally complete. He saw how other delegates looked at Tae-sung, not with gratitude, with unease, with the awareness that they had just been outmaneuvered by someone who had no weapons and no official authority to intervene. When Tae-sung returned to his seat, the Vrelian spoke quietly. "You terrify them." "No," Tae-sung said. "We remind them that conflict has costs, that violence has consequences, that the easiest solution is not always the right one. Every species in this chamber knows how to fight. Humans simply insist that fighting should be the last option, not the first. And if fighting becomes necessary?" Tae-sung's expression remained calm, but something in his eyes suggested depths the Vrelian could not quite read. "Then, we fight with everything we have. But until that moment comes, we will stand unarmed in the middle of every conflict and dare people to pull the trigger. Most species find it easier to talk than to shoot through us to reach their enemies." The session resumed. The council speaker addressed the plasma weapon incident and the near conflict that had just occurred. New security measures were proposed. Debates continued about the mining dispute that had started the day's problems. Through it all, Tae-sung sat quietly in the human section. Unarmed, unguarded, unrestricted. The only species in the entire galactic community permitted to walk into the council chambers without weapons, without searches, without security protocols. Because 58 years ago, humanity had proven that humans without weapons were more dangerous than any armed warrior. They were unpredictable. They were creative. They were willing to die to make a point. And the galaxy had decided that the safest thing to do was give them a special rule. Let them enter unarmed. Let them walk freely. Let them believe they were being honored. But every species who voted for Resolution 447A understood the truth. The rule was not a privilege granted to humanity. It was a precaution taken by everyone else. A way to identify the humans quickly in any crisis. A reminder that the small, unarmed delegates from Earth were the ones you had to watch most carefully. Because humans without weapons did not follow the normal rules of conflict. They wrote their own rules. And those rules had stopped wars, ended hostage crises, and forced proud warrior species to back down from fights they should have won. As Taesung left the chamber at the end of the session, walking through his separate entrance where no security officer would search him or restrict him, he carried with him the legacy of Proxima 7, the knowledge that humanity had earned its place in the galaxy, not through military might, but through an absolute refusal to accept that violence was inevitable. The other species might call it manipulation or madness, but humans called it hope. The persistent, enduring, impossible hope that talking was better than fighting. That peace was worth dying for. That even without weapons, a determined person could change the course of history. That was why humans were the only species permitted to be unarmed in council chambers. Not because they were harmless, but because they had proven that harmless and powerless were not the same thing. And the galaxy had learned that lesson the hard way.